Every option you're keeping open is costing you something you may not have noticed yet. It is costing you yourself. The person who refuses to choose is not preserving their freedom, they are spending it. One deferred decision at a time, until there is nothing left to spend. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Last week, we looked at anxiety, and I suggested that anxiety is not a problem to be solved, but a signal to be read. That what genuine anxiety is pointing toward in almost every case is a choice you have been avoiding. Today, we go directly to that choice. We go to what Kierkegaard considered the most fundamental act available to a human being, and the one most of us spend our life postponing. He called it the either or. And once you understand what he means by it, not the title of the book, but a philosophical condition, of course, I think it will change how you understand not just your decisions, but your identity itself. So let's get started. Kierkegaard's great work, Either or, was published in 1843, and it is structured as a confrontation between two radically different ways of living. The aesthetic life that we have already discussed, represented by the unnamed young man called A, and the ethical life, represented by another man called Judge William. But the book's deepest argument is not really about which of the two ways of living is superior. It is about the act of choosing between them. It is about what it means to choose at all. The central philosophical claim is this: the self is not given. It is something you discover. It's not something you discover already formed, waiting to be uncovered through inner self-reflection. The self is made, it is constructed, it is constituted through the act of choosing by identifying with a possibility and committing to it, by standing behind a choice and accepting the person that choice makes you. You do not find out who you are and then decide. You decide, and in deciding, you become who you are. This is the either or, not a choice between two specific options, a career, a city, a relationship, but the recognition that choosing as such is what makes a self. And that the refusal to choose, however sophisticated, however well reasoned, is also a choice. The choice to remain no one in particular, right? Now let me be very precise here, because this is the point where Kierkegaard is most easily misread. He is not saying that you should choose impulsively, or that deliberation is bad, or that you should simply, pick something and stop thinking. You need to be careful about this. Kierkegaard argues that reflection, careful thinking, weighing of options, honest consideration of what matters is essential and is necessary. Without it, you cannot choose responsibly in a way that is informed. But here is the problem. Reflection, as Kierkegaard puts, it has a kind of inner infinity. A person thinking about a decision can always go on thinking. There is always one more angle to consider, one more option to evaluate, one more piece of information that might change everything. And as long as the thinking continues, the choice does not happen, right? The process of reflection, taken alone, cannot produce a decision, because a decision requires something beyond thinking. It requires the will, the desire to stop reflecting and identify with a possibility to make it yours. Thinking can illuminate every path. Only the will can set your feet on one of them. This is why Kierkegaard says that choosing aesthetically, choosing based on what is most interesting, most stimulating, most immediately appealing, is not really choosing it at all, because the aesthete's criteria for choice is always shifting. The moment the interesting becomes the ordinary, the criteria changes. There is no stable self behind the choices, only a succession of momentary preferences. The aesthete, as Kierkegaard says, continually hovers above himself, never landing, never committing, never becoming anyone specific. Judge William, by contrast, urges A, the character, to do something much more radical and much more uncomfortable, to choose choice itself. Not to choose this option over that one, but to take responsibility for the person he has become through all his previous choices. Even the choice to avoid choosing, and from that honest acknowledgement to begin choosing with full awareness that choosing is what he is doing. The I chooses itself, as William puts it, or more precisely, the I receives itself back through the act of genuine choice. Now, I want to bring in something that I find philosophically important and practically liberating. At the heart of Judge Williams' account is the view that freedom is found in voluntary self-limitation. This sounds paradoxical. Surely, limitation is the opposite of freedom, is it? But what William is saying, and what I think is profoundly true, is that unlimited options do not produce a free self. They produce an empty one. The person with infinite options is, in a real sense, nobody. It is precisely the act of limiting yourself, committing to this career, this relationship, this vocation, this particular way of living, that gives the self shape, coherence, and the possibility of genuine depth. A river without banks is not freer than a river with them. It is simply a flood, formless, directionless, going nowhere in particular. This has an important implication for how we understand commitment in relationships, in work, in any domain of life that matters to us. We tend to think of commitment as a sacrifice of freedom. Kierkegaard says commitment is the only form freedom takes that actually produces a self. Without commitment, freedom is not experienced as liberation. It is experienced as the anxiety we discussed in last week's video, the vertiginous awareness of possibility without the grounding that makes possibility livable. Let me also address something that comes up when people encounter this idea, because it is a genuine objection. What about bad choices? What about people who committed to the wrong career, the wrong relationship, the wrong life, and whose commitment made things worse, not better? Is Kierkegaard saying you should simply stand behind every choice, no matter what? No, he's not saying that. The either or is not an argument for stubbornness or for remaining in harmful situations. It is an argument about the structure of selfhood, about the fact that genuine self-knowledge comes through commitment and its consequences, not through the perpetual avoidance of commitment. A bad choice, honestly made and honestly reckoned with, teaches you something about yourself that 1,000 avoided choices never could. The person who chooses wrongly and knows it is closer to genuine selfhood than a person who never chose at all. Now let me bring this into the world most of us are actually living in, because the contemporary relevance is precise and almost immediate. We live in the age of optionality. The dominant cultural message from career advice, from relationship culture, from the entire, gamut of digital life is that keeping your options open is wisdom. That commitment is risk. That the person who has not yet decided is in a better position as opposed to the person who has. We have built entire platforms around the premise that browsing is superior to choosing, that you can always swipe left one more time, apply to one more company, live in one more city before deciding. Kierkegaard would say that is not freedom. That is despair of possibility in its most culturally celebrated forms. The person who has been browsing for a decade is not more free than the person who chose 5 years ago. They are simply more empty because the self is not made through browsing, it is made through choosing, committing, and living with what you have chosen long enough for it to become genuinely yours. You cannot become yourself at a distance from your own life. You have to enter it fully with both feet, knowing it will cost you other lives you will never live. So choosing is important for construction of the self. The self in existentialist philosophy exists as a constructed entity. So what is Kierkegaard asking of us? He's not asking you to make a rash decision this week. He's not asking you to, abandon reflection or to choose carelessly. He is asking you to be honest with yourself about whether the reflection you are doing is genuinely leading toward a decision, or whether it has become a sophisticated way of postponing one. There is a difference between the person who is genuinely deliberating, who is actively working towards a choice, gathering what they need, moving in a direction, and the person who is flimsy, who is using deliberation as a form of protection, who is thinking endlessly precisely because thinking, unlike choosing, carries no consequences, who has discovered that as long as you are still deciding, you cannot go wrong. The either or is not a demand for certainty before you act. It is the recognition that certainty never comes first. It comes, if it comes at all, only after you have acted. So here is the practical point for this week. Think of one area of your life, just one, where you have been in deliberation mode for longer than is honest. Not a new deliberation that genuinely needs more thought, an old one that you have been returning to for months or years, that you always come back to without resolution, that you sense if you are honest, you already know the answer to, but have been unwilling to act on. That kind of deliberation. And ask yourself this: what is the cost of continuing not to choose? Not the cost of choosing wrongly, the cost of not choosing at all. What is that costing you in terms of energy, in terms of presence, in terms of the life you are actually living while you deliberate about the life you might live? Kierkegaard believed that the examined life is not a life of endless reflection. It's a life in which reflection serves action, and action constitutes the self. The either or is not a burden. It is an invitation to stop hovering above your own life and finally enter it. In the next video, we go to one of Kierkegaard's most important and most underappreciated concepts, the single individual. The idea that you are not your category, not your demographic, not your caste, not your social role, or your algorithmic identity, and what it means to take seriously the irreducible, uncategorizable person that you actually are. Thank you for being here. I will see you in the next one. Bye for now.